This is the Palin Update on Saranet Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla.
It's wonderful to get to be back here, especially in a group full of conservative, hardworking women who know what it's going to take to get the country back on the right track.
Sarah Palin stumps in Georgia for Karen Handel. Governor Palin endorsing Handel's bid for U.S. Senate in the Peach State, and she went and campaigned with Handel this past week. Palin holds a barbecue for another candidate, another endorsement from the Mama Grizzly, and the new TV show Amazing America with Sarah Palin is off to a great start. A brand new Commonwealth Common Sense with Susan Stimson is on the way, and just ahead our latest edition of Steel Resolve with Sarah Steelman. First, Karen Handel joins us. She's running for U.S. Senate in Georgia. Karen has been a guest here before after she took on Planned Parenthood. She exposed the country's leading abortion provider as a liberal political machine in a best-selling book called Planned Bullyhood. And she didn't just talk the talk, she walked the walk. Karen left her post at Susan G. Komen for the Cure when Komen decided to reverse its decision to end grants to Planned Parenthood. A true constitutional, common-sense conservative ready to fight for us. Karen Handel, welcome back to the Palin Update on Saranet Radio.
How are you? It's great to be with you, Kevin. Thanks so much.
Doing well, thank you. You know, I think you are the first repeat guest on the actual Palin Update who's not a Palin family member.
Well, that's an honor in and of itself there, so you were great to invite me back.
See, we like you so much. Well, congratulations, first off, on this well-deserved endorsement from Governor Palin. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's absolutely thrilling, and I'm so excited and honored. You know, she is such a strong voice for not just conservative women, but for the conservative movement, and she's common sense and tells it like it is, and for her to have the confidence in me to be the next United States Senator from Georgia is just very humbling, and I'm so appreciative.
Speaking about you, Palin says we can count on Karen to take real-life skills to Washington, and I think that is such a great compliment because what have we seen in D.C.? Out-of-touch elected officials who can't solve a thing. I mean, they're dealing in the faculty lounge or in textbooks, but half of them would have their wallet pickpocketed from them if they walk down the street. So
That's a good analogy.
You know, I think that Palin really hits it on the head there. It seems like such simple words, but I think that that's really high praise for you.
Well, it is, and you know, we do need to have a big, healthy dose of common sense in Washington, and we need some fresh blood and new perspective. I mean, these folks have made Washington a way of life, and I talk a lot about on the campaign trail about how, you know, everyone's running around in this campaign talking about being the real conservative or the outsider. That's all just political rhetoric. What we need is a person who has had a proven track record of being effective in the tough world of politics and getting things done and persuading people to a different point of view. And I'm the only candidate in this race who has done that. The three congressmen in the race, gosh, they've had 10 to 20 years to do everything they're talking about today.
Palin also says you are a champion for protecting life. That is an issue that is so crucial right now. Let's remind our listeners just how strong of a pro-life advocate you are.
You know, when I faced that moment at Susan G. Komen for the Cure, and I had to decide, you know, Komen made a business decision, a decision in the best interest of the fight against breast cancer to stop doing grants to Planned Parenthood. And when they were just pummeled into submission by Planned Parenthood and their allies, I had to make a decision. Was I going to put my principles first or my paycheck? And I chose my principles.
Yeah, you sure did. And, you know, I mentioned this on another show the other day. I said, that just shows your conviction right there and why a Palin would choose you. I mean, you could talk about how people vote and what their opinions are, but, I mean, you know, you had your foot to the fire there and you made the decision and you showed that you walked the walk. So, I mean, that's huge. Let's go on to another issue. We know you're huge on pro-life. What are your thoughts on immigration? That's been in the news a lot lately, and there's been a lot of bickering within the Republican Party.
It's you know, that's an issue where I believe we need to be strong on enforcement, and from both sides. You know, it's not just enforcement of people who are coming here illegally, but enforcement for businesses who are employing illegal individuals as well. And in addition to focusing on what's happening at the geographic border with Mexico and the United States, we also need to be focused on the very high percentage of illegals who are skipping out on their visas. And we don't solve the problem by just dealing with border security, we need to deal with that visa process as well. There's long been on the books a law requiring an entry-exit tracking system. We need to get moving with that and fix those pieces. And then I think that in addition to that, what can we do to just reinvigorate the American workforce? And it seems to me that always having a knee-jerk response that, well, we need to look overseas for workers to fill these jobs, or we need these illegals to fill these jobs, we need to figure out a way to have for the American workforce these jobs become available. And whether it is the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics sector where some say that we have a real deficit there, well, if that's the case, then let's have a concentrated effort to grow those skills in the United States so that we can draw down our dependence on foreign workers and grow the American workforce.
Obamacare, the website went down yet again as they finished up an enrollment deadline. You have not been afraid to use that word, repeal, when it comes to Obamacare. That's what needs to be done, nothing less?
Oh, absolutely nothing less. Full repeal. We do need to make some changes in our health care system. Congressman Tom Price has a very solid bill, H.R. 2300, that is market-driven and patient-centered. It makes sure the federal government doesn't get in the middle of your health care decisions. It has portability of insurance plans. It provides for high-risk pools for those with pre-existing conditions. And on top of that, it has additional tort reform to help to address the issue that physicians face with having to practice defensive medicine, the costs of which are driving up overall health care costs. So we've got to be firm on that. Obviously, it's going to take getting a GOP majority in the Senate so that we have a GOP majority in the Senate and the House to really move forward on that. But we've got a window of opportunity because this administration has delayed, illegally in my mind, so many aspects of the overall bill.
What about big government? It's growing. They're in our lives and in our business more than ever. What would Senator Handel do there?
Well, Senator Handel would do the following. Number one, we need to have a balanced budget. And whether we do it by constitutional amendment or we elect people like me who are going to insist that we move to a balanced budget, we've got to do it one way or the other and cut the ridiculous spending. I don't think it's so much a question of the ideas about how to cut spending. I think it is a matter of getting strong, gutsy people like myself who are going to have the will and the resolve to make the cut. I think it's Connie Mack has long had the 1 cent solution, do a real 1% cut in the budget for 6 years, and we move ourselves to a balanced budget. And there's so many things that we can cut, Kevin. GAO puts out a report every year. I mean, this is the federal government making recommendations to cut itself, and Congress still can't figure out a way to do it. It's outrageous, and we better do it before we are brought to our financial knees.
While Obama and friends keep talking about other things in order to deflect attention, that's something he's been very good at over these years, quote-unquote good, trying to, take the eyes off of what's really going on and affecting Americans. So many Americans are still out of work. So how can we get some more jobs for hardworking Americans who just can't find the work?
Yep. We're not going to put ourselves on a new path for prosperity just by cutting our way out of it. Yes, we need to deal with the fiscal house and restore fiscal stability in this country, but we also need to have pro-growth policies put in place. We have not had tax reform in this country in almost 30 years. That's left us with the highest corporate tax rate of any industrialized nation in the world. Regulations and the regulatory climate has become so onerous and so punitive that it is literally choking the ability of companies to invest and grow jobs. So I think we need to, I'm a big fan of the fair tax. That means scrapping the IRS, repealing the 16th Amendment, and moving forward with that consumption-based approach. But what I know is that the status quo is unacceptable. On the regulatory side, I have proposed that we do an across-the-board audit of every single agency that promulgates regulations. We go through it with a fine-tooth comb. Let's start with banking and finance and move to EPA, those two areas which have such a gigantic footprint over how companies do business, and understand not only the cost, because we're spending $1.8 trillion a year in compliance costs, but how can we understand the real impact on job growth and roll that back? And number three, we don't need to move the minimum wage up. Doing that is going to stifle job creation even more. We need to be growing good quality, stable jobs, the kind of jobs that give people the security that they need so that if the car breaks down, they don't have to choose between fixing the car and putting food on the table or having a roof over their head.
Palin's new television show, Amazing America, on Sportsman Channel has focused some of the episodes on shooting and firearm sports. The Second Amendment is so important to Palin and to you as well, correct?
That's right. That's right. We need to protect our Second Amendment rights and our religious freedom rights as well to the fullest extent, and I will stand firm on anyone who attempts to encroach on those. And we can't let the emotions of tragedy come in and try to infringe on our freedoms, the Second Amendment or any of our other constitutional freedoms.
And so you mean when you're in office, I could send you as a senator a card that says Christmas on it?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we actually had to have a bill passed in the state legislature about that for one of our school districts. I mean, where have we come to that we're going to be so, quote, invasive into people's lives that people can't even say Merry Christmas? I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Now, Governor Palin has been talking about you so much of late and really letting everyone know about what a great candidate you are. Now it's your turn. What are your thoughts on Palin?
You know, I think she is a gutsy, tell-it-like-it-is conservative woman who has been a breath of fresh air for conservatives across this country. And on a personal note, my husband Steve and I so enjoyed meeting her and having the opportunity to spend some time with she and Todd when they were here in Atlanta during the governor's race, and just truly down-to-earth people. And I think that you can tell a lot about two individuals by being able to spend some time and how genuine they are, and both of them very much are. And so we're very lucky to have her voice for conservatives.
What's your website?
KarenHandel.com. And if you want to learn more about my plan to restore prosperity in America, check out Karen'sPlan.com.
Sounds great. Karen Handel running for U.S. Senate in Georgia. We thank you so much, and we hope to talk to you again.
Absolutely, Kevin. I will look forward to it. God bless you, and God bless everyone out there listening. Thanks so much.
For more on this superb candidate in Georgia, go to KarenHandel.com. That's Karen Handel, HANDEL.com. This past week, Palin took part in a barbecue and rally for Lizbeth Benequisto, who's running for Congress in Florida. Palin said after spending time with Lizbeth, her family, and supporters, I'm even more convinced that she's the one who can help clean up Washington and restore integrity to our political process. Governor Palin has made her choice in Nebraska, throwing an endorsement to Pete Ricketts in his run for governor. Of Ricketts, Palin said while Pete's opponents in this race have made a career for themselves as politicians, bureaucrats, or lobbyists, Pete spent his career in the private sector, helping grow his family's successful business from the bottom up. She adds Pete Ricketts is the clear, principled, common-sense conservative choice in this race, and I hope you'll join me in lending him your support. And Amazing America with Sarah Palin on the Sportsman Channel is off to a tremendous start. The network aired back-to-back episodes on opening night. Shooting champ Julie Golub, pro wrestler cowboy James Storm, and Iditarod legend Dee Jonro were featured. 2 quality half-hour episodes. If you haven't seen them yet, tune in, because 2 new ones are out this week. Amazing America with Sarah Palin on the Sportsman Channel. Must-see TV has returned. To see any of the governor's posts in their entirety, visit Sarah Palin's Facebook page and follow her on Twitter at Sarah Palin, USA.
It's time for Commonwealth Common Sense with Susan Stimson and Kevin Scholla.
Hello, Susan. How are you?
Kevin, I'm great, and it's very nice to be with you.
Well, Tax Day 2014, it certainly means a little bit of a different thing, and no one ever looks forward to it, but under the policies today, people really racking their brains over not only tax day and paying taxes, but a code that's 1 million pages long. It's not a fun day for anybody with any type of common sense.
I think that a lot of people are also seeing in their overall tax bill an increase. A lot of these policies that sound great when you talk about them, but when it's time to pay for it, there are a limited number of people who are going to foot the bill, and I think that this is becoming a very painful process for Americans. I saw an article that was talking about, for tax day, America just needs more jobs and not higher taxes, and that's just not the philosophy of the current president and the Democrat Party right now that's in charge, that they do believe that it's a bigger government that can solve the problem, but that's a very static answer, because obviously we're not seeing a lot of growth, and we're seeing a very lackluster economy, and on top of that, you have increased health care costs and taxes going up. And my overall issue with this is not just that it's the Democrats that are doing this, but for a lot of these policies to really come into play, including raising the debt ceiling and the amount of debt that we're assuming, it takes two to tango. And I think that the Republican Party, too often, we've seen conservatism not be as successful as it should be, and we do know that those conservative policies work. So I just think that it's not just a struggle right now, for Republicans to defeat Democrats if we want to implement conservative policies, but it's also to really rally behind some conservative candidates that are going to get in there and actually do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah, the Democrats, pushing these things, and then Republicans acting as the enabler, the Republican establishment at least. A lot of dirty hands in this. Who in their right mind would think it's a good idea to have so many pages upon pages of things that most Americans, maybe Sarah Steelman can because she's an economist, but most people that I know could never wrap their self around the tax code. Why not simplify this and make it easier not only to pay, not only for you to do with your money what you see fit, but also just to understand what's going on with your taxes? Is this purposeful? Is this something where they say, hey, look, no one will ever get through this? Do they hide behind kind of like the Pelosi philosophy before about, we have to pass the bill, so we can understand what's in it? Is it that kind of thing too? Like, hey, if we hide behind this, we can keep milking everyone?
I've certainly seen it in my experience governing here in the seventh largest county in Virginia, but also at the state level as well. There are competing interests. There are reasons that, like here in the state government, we used to have a website on the government website where you could go and you could do your state taxes, but the General Assembly, in their wisdom a few years ago, made it mandatory that you have to purchase a tax program in order to file your state taxes. And I would just say follow the interest. That's just one example, but a lot of these laws and a lot of these regulations, some of them are well-intended and some of them are also representing other interests. And that's why I think that what I see among the people in my neighborhood, my community, and in this state, that there's just a hunger for something different in the elected officials. And I think that was part of the hope that President Obama talked about, that he offered. I think that's what America was yearning for at that time. It turned out to be a disappointment and not hope. But I still think that our country is hungering for something different. And I'm seeing here in Virginia just a rise in the overall grassroots and the average Virginian just coming out and getting involved in what's happening in their government, because otherwise, if we don't, I just think that we're seeing so many constraints that we're going to blink and it's really going to be too late to really do a lot about it.
One thing that always stands out to me during tax time, when you see the taxes released of public officials and the hypocrisy rears its head again. Democrats are always trying to tell us what we should do with our money, yet so many times you'll see they give so much less to charity as opposed to some conservatives. I remember Joe Biden, who's been in the Senate for eons, back in 2008 when he was running against Governor Palin for the vice presidency. You saw that the Palins gave so much more percentage of their income, even though they had far less of an income at that time. So there's also hypocrisy in this too, just like pretty much every other issue we've been dealing with, and the media doesn't cover it.
I think that there's just an easier route when you're dealing with someone else's money and you're not dealing with your own. And if more of our elected officials would treat that stewardship, as if it were their own families' dollars and just have the respect for other families as they are managing, their resources through the government, I think that we would see a big difference.
All right. Taxed enough already. Thank you very much, Susan.
Thanks, Kevin.
Susan Stimson in Virginia. More Commonwealth Common Sense next week. Now our weekly commentary, Steel Resolve. Here's Sarah Steelman.
Thanks, Kevin. Many of us have read the horrific story of the treatment of fetal remains by the hospitals in England. It was reported that an estimated 15,500 fetal remains have been incinerated. There was the heartbreaking story of the mother who recounted asking the nurse where the remains of her baby would go, and the nurse said it would be incinerated with the rest of the day's waste. It reminded me of a law that I sponsored and passed when I was a state senator. It also reminded me how extreme the pro-abortionists are here in the States. My bill was named the Disposition of Fetal Remains Act. It required that the state issue a certificate of birth resulting in stillbirth, and that a mother has a right to determine the final disposition of the fetal remains regardless of the duration of the pregnancy. It's hard to believe that a Democratic governor could veto a bill that simply preserves human dignity and kindness at the loss of a baby, but it was vetoed. The pro-abortion groups put pressure on the governor and he caved into them. We should be outraged at the inhumanity of those English hospitals, but we should also be outraged at the pro-abortionists who would not allow mothers who miscarry their babies to claim the remains and allow for a proper burial. It's heartbreaking, sad, and inhumane, and it goes on every day here in America. This is Sarah Steelman for SaraNet Radio.
Tune in again next week for another segment of Steel Resolve right here on the Palin Update. The Palin Update, including Commonwealth Common Sense and Steel Resolve, is on demand and available for download. So just head to SaraNetRadio.net, pick the show you want to hear, and you can listen anywhere, anytime. Well, that'll just about do it for this edition of the Palin Update on SaraNet Radio. Visit SaraNetRadio.net for continuing coverage of Governor Palin. Also, follow along on Twitter at SaraNet Radio, at Kevin Scholla, at Susan B. Stimson, and at Sarah_Steelman. Palin Patriots is our feature on SaraNet.net. Check out the writings from our great panel of contributors, including Martha Zoller, Dan Bongino, and Bader Carmoot. And I'm doing some writing for Breitbart News. Just go to Breitbart.com and search Kevin Scholla. I'm also doing a weekly hit on the Eddie Burke Show in Alaska every Thursday morning. SaraNet.net then takes the segment from the show and puts it up on our site, so you can check that out each and every week. Just go to SaraNet.net for America with Kevin Scholla on the Eddie Burke Show in Alaska. I want to thank Sarah Steelman, Susan Stimson, and everyone here at SaraNet Radio. Thanks to Karen Handel, and thank you for listening today. Please be sure to join us again next time for another edition of the Palin Update. I'm Kevin Scholla. Have a pleasant day.